it should go away in 2 hours maximum. So what if they are not able to manage it within 2 hours?
The prevention can be remembered with the word seeds. We can't sleep like babies. That's bad for us. We have to use our brain effectively. Caffeine in both these drinks could be a contributor. The concept of crystal clear days, meaning
Nobody should sleep more than 6 to 7 hours. How does that affect?
I'm excited about selling this message across the world with the platform of World Federation Neurology, with the platform of Migraine Foundation, and with the platforms that we have, like what you have done. I don't made it community's problem. Now let's go back to prevention. The prevention can be remembered with the word seeds. We all know about seed. So we are talking about seeds. SEEDS. So the first S stands for sleep. The first E stands for eating and drinking healthy. Second E stands for exercise. D stands for diary. Last S stands for stress management. So let's unpack them with a little bit more detail. Now, sleep is of utmost importance to our brain. We already know that brain is the most sophisticated organ in our body. That's the central processing unit that drives who we are, our thinking, planning, everything else. And it is at work all the time. Even when you are asleep, your brain is at work. That's why you experience dream, etc. And it work with electricity and chemical activity, and both most of the time. It does produce a lot of waste product. The only way that it can get rid of this waste product is by sleeping. That's why when newborn babies are born, they sleep a lot because their brain is significantly more active, pruning the developing connections, developing connections. So similarly, a lot of waste products are made also, so they need to sleep a lot. But people like your age, my age, and the working class folks, we need to sleep at least good 6-7 hours every night. It should not be more than that. We can't sleep like babies. That's bad for us. We have to use our brain effectively. And if we sleep less, that is also bad for us. So it's a risk factor for many disorders, including migraine. So sleeping good quality sleep, about 6-7 hours per night, is really necessary. So the E stands for eating and drinking healthy, eating plenty of fruits, vegetables, less red meat, less carbohydrate in particular, and the less fat and all the healthy things. Have small portion size, and that small portion should have much less carbohydrate, significant amount of protein, and significant amount of vegetables is really necessary. Less red meat is better for you in the long run, and a lot of fruits and nuts also. Having small meals, small portion size multiple times per day is much more healthier than having one or two really heavy, huge meals. And drink a lot of water. And the any drinks that contain too much sugar or refined sugar or added chemicals and preservatives is not probably going to be healthy for you. Specific mention about coffee and tea is necessary. Caffeine in both these drinks could be a contributor for medication overuse headache in migraine. I do drink both tea and coffee, but I keep a lid on how much tea and coffee I drink. It's better to drink moderate amount, ideally 1 or 2 cups of coffee maximum if you are a tea or coffee drinker, and then not change it as you wish. In other words, some days 7, 8, some days none. That's not going to be helpful for you in migraine prevention. So the D stands for diary. Here the most important thing is for us to know a good idea of how many migraine days that we are having, how many crystal clear days that we are having, and how many days we have to take medications. I normally introduce the concept of crystal clear days, meaning there are no symptoms coming from my head. I have hunky dory days and I have full access to my brain. Those are the days that we desperately want. We want as less headache days as possible, as less head related migraine symptoms as possible, and as less acute migraine medication use days as possible. S is very big, stress management. While I don't have a magic formula to manage stress, my advice to all your viewers is be the best human being that you can be. Be helpful be helpful to others, be kind to others, be compassionate to others. Don't try and be jealous at others and do all those nasty things. If you are really genuinely nice to other human beings, if you don't worry about what others do, and if you are really genuinely kind and compassionate, I think it is much easier to manage your stress then. Life becomes much easier. That's number one. Number two is always remember that we are here for a short period of time on this planet. Whatever the spiritual or religious belief that you have, or whether you don't have any of them, biologically we know that we born and we grow old and we die. There's no point stressing ourselves out with unnecessary things that we can't control. Sometimes bad things happen in life. Sometimes we lose our job. Sometimes we have difficult financial circumstances. Sometimes we have difficult family members. But always forgive, forget, acknowledge, and live each moment as best as you can. And live in moderation. So, those are my simple tips. You may or may not agree with what I preach, but these things have worked for me so far. And the key important thing is managing stress as positively as possible, as morally correct as possible, is going to be hugely beneficial to lessen the number of migraine attacks that you get, even though you are genetically made up to this world to generate more the symptoms from your migraine. And the one E that we didn't address is exercise. Exercise is really beneficial for promoting brain health and preventing migraine also. Walking in particular, if you walk daily for 45 minutes per day for 5 days per week, your headache day reduction is just as good as we giving you a prescription medication called topiramate, 200 milligram daily for 6 months. This was a published research paper from one of the American headache journals a few years back. But any exercise is better. If you say that I am a disabling headache sufferer and I can't walk at all, you can start walking around the house to begin with medical advice, then gradually build that up. Add other things, a little bit of dancing, a little bit of swimming, a little bit of cycling. Any physical activity is better than nothing. Walking in particular. So exercise and all these things that I mentioned in seeds, what it eventually generate is a lot of happy chemicals in the brain. If you wanted to know them, you can remember another simple word called dose. Dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, and endorphin. If you want to have a good dose of happy chemicals in the brain, happy electrical activity of the brain, do a lot of seeds. Sleep, exercise, eat, drink healthy. Keep an eye on the how many days you are suffering and how many days you are not suffering, and manage your stress as positively as possible and as best as possible. So those are lifestyle things. The other two things to mention are there are very good prescription medications available also. In fact, in Australia, thanks to pharmaceutical benefit scheme and thanks to the advocacy of our charity Migraine Foundation and other charities also, such as Brain Foundation and Migraine Australia, etc., we have 21 prescription medications available for migraine sufferers in Australia under pharmaceutical benefit scheme, meaning that you don't have to spend a fortune to access them. You just pay a normal prescription fee. Those medications, work with your specialist or doctor and pick what the best medication for you depending on your circumstances, and then try the best tolerable dose for a good duration of 8 to 12 weeks before you write that off. Sometimes you can combine them also. Last but not least, there are very good proven over the counter medications also: magnesium, vitamin B2, feverfew, butterbur, coenzyme Q10. Again, please don't take them by yourself just by watching this program. Have a chat with your family doctor, have a chat with the specialist. Just because they are over the counter doesn't mean that they are quite safe. They also contain chemical. Not every over the counter medication is suitable for everyone, depending on your body weight, depending on your other issues. Have a chat with your family doctor, specialist, and pharmacist and select one or two of them, and then combine them with your lifestyle, prescription medication to alleviate number of migraine attacks that you get. Most important thing to tell about migraine management, to finish off answering your question, apologies for the long answer: never lose hope. This is a really pervasive, complex disorder. This is also the medical disorder that is most neglected, worst managed, and most disrespected medical disorder worldwide by patients, by doctors, sometimes by brain specialists themselves, unfortunately. And we need to change that. But change should start from you. The most important thing is never lose hope. Always tell yourself that, yes, I have migraine, but I'm not going to let migraine have me. Yes, I have migraine, but I don't have holes in my brain. I don't have lack of half of my brain because of migraine. It's a tiny dot in my brain. It's a problem in my electrical activity and chemical activity. I'm going to unentangle that with the help of lifestyle, over the counter medications, and other medications. In my view, we should be able to reduce the disability of migraine significantly. We should be able to prevent the disability of migraine significantly, but we need lot more advocacy to do that at all levels. So my last but not least message is, please never lose hope if you are a migraine sufferer. This can be well managed, and as you can see, I have full potential in my life and I access to my brain 100% at least 350, 360 days per year.
There are two more questions coming to my mind.
Mhm.
The first one is actually, you specifically mention if somebody is having migraine frequently, they should manage it within 2 hours, right? It should go away in 2 hours maximum. So what if they are not able to manage it within 2 hours? How they can manage it? Or is there any consequences if they are not able to get away with it within 2 hours?
That is a great question, Rohit, and this would help me to clarify this matter further. So, what I said is when we are treating an acute attack of migraine, let's say that I get an acute attack of migraine. Usually, I manage my acute attacks of migraine with 2 or 3 tablets of ibuprofen or 2 or 3 tablets of aspirin, for as I'm not allergic to both of them and I don't overuse them. So the idea is I need to catch my acute attack as early as possible, and I don't want them to spread into too much light sensitivity, too much noise sensitivity, and too much fatigue, etc., so that I can access my brain before it get into a full-blown attack of migraine. You have to look at this as a race. So your migraine brain, when it starts at that prodrome, when you feel excessively thirsty, or when you feel like you want to urinate excessively, or when you are yawning excessively, or when you have the desire to have an episode of binge eating or binge drinking, your deep parts of the brain is already sick. But you have not gone into the more electrical spread from back to the front, as I mentioned earlier, how this disorder occurred to the best of our knowledge in 2025, that is. So the idea of this 2 hour reduction comes from the notion that you want to win this race against brain. You want to stop that electrical spread and other phases of migraine before it moves down the path of a full blown attack of migraine that is going to knock you out for a couple of days. So, the idea of getting rid of the symptoms in 2 hours is if my ibuprofen or aspirin, if it does the job that I intend it to perform, then I should be free from the symptoms of migraine from 2 hours. Let's say that I try that for 5 attacks of migraine during last 6 months. If I learn that 4 times it did nothing and I was suffering for a couple of days, then I have to change what I'm doing to a different acute medication. I may need to have a different migraine specific medication other than simple painkillers or slightly different dose. Or I may have to change the route of injection. Say, for an example, if I realize that those 5 attacks that my medications fail to help me to get rid of the symptoms within 2 hours, if I were quite nauseous, chances are likely that the medication that I swallowed didn't get into my bloodstream because my stomach was paralyzed to absorb that. So I may need to talk to my doctor to get a different medication that I might keep under my tongue. So I use the blood vessels in my tongue to absorb them into the system, or something that is coming from injectable form, or something that I might need to insert through my back passage, so that I use blood vessels in my back passage to get the medication into the system. So it is difficult for me to give a generic answer that suits everyone. But the key thing that your viewers need to know is the reason that we treat an acute attack is to get this 2 hour symptom freedom and to be free the next day morning. To answer your other question, if we were using medications and if we are not achieving 2 hour symptom freedom and 24-hour symptom freedom, then we are at risk of developing two other problems. One, chronic migraine, that means more than 10 symptom days per month for more than 3 months, and medication overuse headache because we are using the acute medication repeatedly, not achieving what we wanted to achieve. That is going to change an electrical and chemical activity in the brain in the long run. So it is a really great question, and I'm grateful for you to question me on that further so that our viewers can get a good understanding and hopefully they can educate their doctors also. I'm not saying that you should be in the place of giving a lecture to your medical doctor, but you could politely and gently say that I learned about this 2 hour pain freedom by watching this program, and I did that homework over last 3 months. What you have given me did not allow me to achieve this. Do you think that you could give me something else so that I can be symptom free in 2 hours? I can be symptom free the next day morning so that I can prevent me going into chronic migraine and medication overuse headache. Because this disorder is such a neglected disorder, I think we have to take the ownership to ourselves and keep educating our treating practitioners slowly and subtly as we continue to educate our political leaders slowly and subtly to get what community needs also in a friendly and a collegiate and compassionate way.
Definitely, I agree with you, specifically when you mention like we can educate our doctors, but in a polite way. Definitely, they have done studies and they are watching different kind of patients every day, and sometimes it can skip from their mind as well. Okay, this is the different way I can treat them, or I can give them for a try. If that works well for them, it'll be helpful for them. So that's the time you take ownership.
And I would also add the Rohit, given that migraine is such a neglected,
Yeah,
badly managed disorder, there is sort of a myth among most medical community also. I mean, recently, without naming the country, I was in an international headache meeting, in fact, and one of the senior neurology specialists told me that why are you seeing headache patients? You can't get these patients better. He's not a bad person, but that's the attitude that some neurology experts have. So the way that we change that is by politely and compassionately getting them on board and letting them have the reward of treating these patients well and seeing them smiling and seeing them getting their life back would bring them back.
Next question that I have is basically when you are telling about the brain function and migraines, the question that came to my mind when you specifically mentioned that nobody should sleep more than 6 to 7 hours, how does that affect, like, for example, if anybody end up sleeping or they are sleeping more than 8 hours every day, how does that affects the brain?
Let me clarify that this question a little bit more, the Rohit. What I said was that ideal sleep for grown-up humans is about good 6-7 hours sleep. I don't think if someone is sleeping 8 hours, I doubt that it would cause a major problem if that is the habit that they had. But if someone is sleeping like 12 hours, 13 hours, 14 hours, that seems to exacerbate headaches in particular, in migraine world in particular. To clarify one other matter, I wouldn't say that nobody should sleep 7 hours. We know that babies must sleep a lot, and the number of sleep hours recommended depending on how old they are. So small children, including primary school kids, probably should sleep a lot during night time, more than almost double the amount that I mentioned. But what I said is basically grown-ups, say people like you and me, we shouldn't sleep too much. In particular, people with migraine, too much sleep definitely increase number of migraine attacks that they get and number of headaches. Why they are experiencing that, we don't know the exact reason behind that yet. We do know that too little sleep is basically helping us to not to clear waste products, but too much sleep and the impact. I don't know the answer to that question. These are things that we need to research in time to come. It's a good habit to have good quality sleep. The younger you are, to make sure that you sleep a lot more than usual, and specifically as grown-ups, to not to sleep too much and not to sleep too little. I think, like in anything in life, things in moderation is a good thing
Always
for
good.
us,
Yep.
and sleep is no different.
Is there any research is going on this topic?
Sleep and migraine, like many other aspects of migraine, there's a lot more to do rather than what we have done. It's a good question for me to remind viewers that not only migraine is quite neglected, I think I mentioned this multiple times. If you look at, take for an example, if you take Australia, our
Mm-hmm.
main research funder is NHMRC, National Institute of Health and Medical Research Council,
Mm-hmm.
which allocate reasonable amount of money for medical research. I studied the amount of money that Australian government has allocated for migraine research. You would assume that this would be big, given that this is the leading cause of disability in Australia. Cost Australian economy $40 billion. From 1997 to 2007, during that 10-year gap, this is available through public space, and I published a paper also on this. But if you go to NHMRC website, you can see this for yourself if you are good at IT and mathematics
Mm-hmm.
without stealing in the public space. Australian government allocated 0.07% of entire research allocation to migraine research. So it's a very little amount of money that they allocated for migraine research, despite its being the leading cause of disability in Australia, despite it cost Australian economy $40 billion. There are two reasons, as far as I am concerned, for that. One is obviously NHMRC is not interested in supporting migraine research. And the second thing is we researchers are not submitting good research grant applications. So, how do we change this? I think to change this, we need grassroots level advocacy. We need people who suffer from migraine to come forward and work with us on things like World Migraine Day, Migraine Awareness Walk, etc. Tune into this sort of podcasts, make comments, and share your stories, and talk to your parliamentarians, and say that this is not on. This is the leading cause of disability. We won't address this, and also talk to your doctors, encourage them to do research, encourage them to submit good grant applications, etc.
I do remember while researching you, I have seen few of the articles on you that you are actually working more on advocacy of migraine and spreading the awareness. And throughout our discussion so far, that's what I have seen. And you are a co-chair of World Federation of Neurology Public Awareness and Advocacy Committee. So on to that, what initiates you are more passionate about?
As you probably figured out, I am most passionate about brain health. And since I got involved with World Federation Neurology, just to enlighten your viewers, the World Federation Neurology is the global body that is responsible for brain disorders, neurological disorders in particular. It is the non-governmental sector for World Health Organization, if you like. We are not part of World Health Organization, but World Federation Neurology consists of national neurology associations in each country. Say, for an example, Indian Academy of Neurology is a member of World Federation of Neurology.
Okay.
Australia and New Zealand Neurology Association is the national bodies of neurology society in Australia and New Zealand, is a member of World Federation Neurology. Sri Lankan Association of Neurologists, Bangladesh Neurology Society. So each country has a single vote within WFN.
Gotcha.
So we were involved with the public awareness and advocacy since the inception of that committee. And I'm also one of the co-founders and co-chairs of World Brain Day committee since we established this as a theme 2014. So it's a pivotal moment right now. We already mentioned that 1 in 3 of us are having a brain disorder. When I say brain disorder, people are familiar with common brain disorders. Migraine is the commonest brain disorder, impacting over 1 billion people, one of the commonest. Tension type headache, about 2 billion people. Then dementia is about 54 million people. Stroke, about 111 million people. Post-COVID neurological syndrome or long COVID, about 100 million people. Epilepsy or fits, about 50 million people. Head injuries, a lot of people also. Multiple sclerosis, about 3 million people. Parkinson's disease, about 12 million people worldwide. I'm giving these numbers. So these are the common things. And then there are uncommon rare disorders. Or one of the other commonest thing that I forgot to mention is diabetes-related peripheral nerve damage is also among the top 10 causes of brain disorders as from our research last year that we published in Lancet. So altogether there are about 400 neurological disorders. But majority of these disorders can be prevented. Say for an example, that 111 million people with stroke, at least 90 million of them should not have occurred in the first place. Because we already know what works for preventing stroke, but we have not been able to sell this message to the community to drive preventive brain health across lifespan. Say for an example, there's no point talking about brain, there's a point, but there's very little to gain talking about preventive brain health at the age of 70 or 80 years of your age.
Definitely.
You need to talk about brain health before you bring a child to this world. As a husband and wife get together, or when two grown-ups get together to bring a new life to the world, you need to plan as best as possible. We are doing everything that we can do to make sure that our child is going to be having the healthiest brain that she or him can have at that time they're born. So you prepare for the pregnancy well, you behave well, you eat well, you exercise well, you don't smoke, you don't drink alcohol, you don't drink even caffeine containing drinks, just in case if they have a negative connotation of the child that is going to be born. You don't take prescription medications unless if it is absolutely necessary, etc. And similarly, as children are growing up, we give them the best possible opportunity to grow up with a healthy brain. Similarly, when you're at school, high school, you practice preventive brain health measures, and same with as we get older. So I'm excited about selling this message across the world with the platform of World Federation Neurology, with the platform of Migraine Foundation, and with the platforms that we have, like what you have done by inviting me to come here. Despite I had a very busy day, I thought that this is an opportunity to get this message across. Every little the help counts, as we have 8 billion people, and we need fellow humans to know that they are in huge trouble. Trouble is not economy. Trouble is not the calamities and conflicts that we hear from news every day and every morning and every afternoon. Trouble is, at this point of time, 1 in 3 of us are having a brain disorder. 1 in 3 of us are having a serious problem in our central processing unit. We can't go like this. We don't have money, even in Australia, to deal with all these problems. I already told you the issues with migraine in Australia and migraine research. Then the best next option is raising awareness at the community, and then promote preventive brain health. We have introduced a concept called LifeSTEM, as you can see from the graphics, 5 behaviors, 5 risk factor controls. They should help us to promote preventive brain health across lifespan, so that we can achieve full potential of human life, irrespective of who you are, where you live, what language you speak, what religion you believe, what kind of songs that you listen to. Irrespective of that, preventive brain health is global. And if you practice those behaviors, if you practice those risk factor controls, I think we can prevent this carnage across lifespan. That's what I am mostly passionate about.
That's great. Let's move to the final two questions, right? And then we'll wrap this episode up here today. And what's a surprising or little known fact about the brain that always fascinates you?
We are basically nothing without our brains, right? You won't be doing this if your brain is not functioning. I won't be doing this without my brain functioning. None of your viewers would tune in without their brains functioning. You cannot operate any one of these things. Yet, years ago, before we introduced World Brain Day, nobody was talking about brain health. The definition of brain health came about only in 2021. World Health Organization came up with the definition of brain health. Brain health is this only like 4 years ago. Isn't that surprising that we are here because of our brains, but we put very little attention to
To the brain.
the brain. I'm not criticizing stepmothers, so my apologies for using this term. My background is Sri Lankan, and I remember when we grew up, there was sort of this sort of a comment that they used to say that in Sri Lankan language, the language that I'm familiar with, if someone is neglecting the terminology that you it's like sort of stepmother's treatment. Again, I'm most sincerely my most sincere apologies. I know that there are terrific stepmothers who are probably better than some mothers. I'm using this with my upbringing, so without having any interest of hurting anybody. It's that sort of a ill treatment or mistreatment that we have been giving to the very
To the
organ who made
who runs
us,
us actually.
who runs us, basically, isn't it? That surprised me. But it also surprised me that I'm not that old. I'm old, but I'm not that old. I got a lot of years ahead of me, hopefully. From 2014 to now, to see that we were able to bring more than billion people with us with very little investment. The World Federation Neurology is a philanthropic organization. We offer our time free to do these things during our family times and holiday times and other times, mostly after hours and weekends, etc. And to think that with that, the genuine passion, we were able to bring billion people with us is also surprising. So I am optimistic. Despite we only became interested in this recently, we now have a WHO definition. We now know that brain health and mental health is intimately related. I am hoping that there will be a day before we die or before we leave this planet, we will completely wipe out things like domestic abuse 100%. We will the wipe out human animosities against humans almost completely if we promote brain health as a global concept worldwide, and if we make brain health a really household name, and if humans bring other humans to the world to promote brain health and making sure that every human is accessing their brain to the full capacity, I can't imagine how humans would be in another 100 years' time. They would be the most caring, most compassionate, most earth friendly, most other living being friendly beings in this planet. And that is needed. And also, if we can prevent brain disorders, then we will have more brains to access.
Definitely, that's correct. Um, Moving to my last question, if you could give your young self a piece of advice about life or career, what would it be?
I think, as I said, be the best human being that you can be. I think we have this inherent tendency that when things don't go according to the plans that you have, you already heard that I was born in very rural Sri Lanka. The place that I grew up, we did not have electricity, we did not have hot water. It was a very cold place. In fact, when we were invaded by British invaders in 1815 or thereabout, I read that it was one of the most fertile and most rich places in the country. But the year that I was born, it was the most impoverished, poor, difficult place to be born. Yet we were happy. We were very happy with what we had. And I remember my grandparents teaching me that you have to build your world, and what you have or what you are going to have is what you create. Not it, if you don't have a particular thing, it's not someone else's problem, it's your problem. If you want something, you work hard to get it. And one advantage that we had was access to education. I told you that I was an
Yep.
avid reader. We had books, we had newspapers, and we had quality material to read. And that upbringing always tells me, even now, the if I don't get what I want right now, I don't see that as a problem created by someone else. I see that as a problem of mine. I already told you that I get depressed to see that when I can't prevent strokes, when I can't prevent dementia, but I made it my problem. I don't made it community's problem. I made it my problem, and I came up with the idea with one of my colleagues from Pakistan to introduce the World Brain Day. You can see that we are raising awareness and we are taking the community with us. My advice to youngsters is if you feel that something is not right, don't make it someone else's problem, make it your problem, and do the best to address that problem as best as you can. Learn as much as possible, educate yourself as much as possible. Always follow the AFL code: acknowledge, forgive, learn. Sorry that I divert the AFL from usual AFL to different AFL.
This
Acknowledge
is,
that
I would say, better AFL.
acknowledge there is a problem, so the you don't get angry with different
Yeah.
people, and make it yours, but don't suffer. Forgive the wrongdoers as much as you can, and then learn from it and learn hard to end that problem as best as possible later on. And never lose hope. As I said before, I'm very optimistic. I'm optimistic that despite 1 in 3 of us are having a largely preventable brain disorder, I'm optimistic that with grassroots level preventive brain health campaigns such as Lifespan, we would leave our children and their children a better world.
That's great knowledge you have shared with us today. We'll wrap this episode up here, and thank you so much for giving your time to us, and we'll look forward more of your time with more knowledge to share with our audience. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me, Rohit, and thank you for doing this great work. All the very best with the program.
That's a wrap for an enlightening episode of Real Talks with Rohit Jaichand. Heartfelt thanks to Professor Tess for sharing his wealth of knowledge and inspiring us to prioritize our brain health. If you enjoyed this episode, please like and subscribe, share it with someone who could benefit. Join us next time for more real conversations. Until then, stay healthy, stay curious, and as always, keep it real.